Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of 3 and Out on LTTV. My name is Johnny Lombardi, and I'll be your host. Along with me, this week's guest, another former LTTV announcer and current junior at Lewis University, Aron Nelson. Aron, It was a major night in sports last night. We have a lot to talk about, including an epic NBA Finals comeback, the Blackhawks in trouble in the Stanley Cup Finals, and a lot of action in the College World Series. But we're going to start off talking about the NBA Finals Game 6. The San Antonio Spurs led the Heat 3-2 heading into last night's action, and it looked like the Spurs were going to take the title, but the Heat roared back behind LeBron James' 18 fourth-quarter points to win the game 103-100 in a thrilling overtime game, forcing a Game 7 Thursday night. Now, Aron, this game had it all, and I heard today on the radio, Colin Cowherd said a quote that I really liked this quote. Everybody won in America except the Spurs last night. It was just great basketball.
I agree with this quote 100%. The Spurs had the game in the bag, and they just couldn't finish it. They missed 2 key free throws down at the end. Ginobili missed one of them, and then Kawhi Leonard missed one that would have iced the game and won them the championship. But then, it's the Miami Heat. They got deadly three-point shooters, and all it takes is one mistake, and there you go.
Yeah, the Spurs were up by 10 points to start the fourth quarter, and it went off. LeBron James really went off early in that quarter. No Tim Duncan, no Tony Parker on the floor, and the Heat took advantage of that. And it was down at the end. The Spurs were down to the Heat, but they came back and took the lead again with less than a minute to play, and it looked like they were going to be crowned champions, but LeBron James misses a 3, and the Miami Heat, as you said, the worst rebounding team in the league,
ranked 30th.
Somehow finds 2 unbelievable rebounds by Chris Bosh.
Chris Bosh just out-hustled everybody. He went up there, jumped, even cheap shots, pushing a player out of the way. They don't make those calls at the end of a game, so Chris Bosh took advantage of that and got an offensive rebound, made a dish out to LeBron James, and he hit a 3 to, come back. And Chris Bosh, that's what he does. He's a big man.
He also had another rebound from a missed LeBron 3, a brick. LeBron bricked that shot,
Absolutely,
and Bosh somehow was able to get a rebound, dishes it out to Ray Allen, and he hits the 3 to tie the game and force overtime. And the Spurs got an awful look at the end of regulation. Tony Parker really had nothing to do. And when it went to overtime, I had the feeling that this game was over, that there's no way the Spurs were going to be able to rebound from that. And it went from the San Antonio Spurs looking like they were going to be champions to having to try to come back and win a Game 7 on the road, which is very hard, playing against the best player in the world. The last play of the overtime, the 3 by Danny Green that was blocked by Chris Bosh, foul or no foul?
At the end of a game, they're not going to necessarily make every single call because you got to let them play. It gets rough in the playoffs. This is the NBA Finals. They're not going to make cheap calls against a team. Because, sure, he was touched. He hit him with his body, but you're not going to make that call in the NBA Finals with 5 or 2 seconds to go.
Yeah, but in San Antonio, you mentioned it, just missed 3-point attempts, missed free throws, obviously kills any team. And Manu Ginobili turns into a turnover machine in this game. This entire series, really, he's been bad on turnovers.
He's been very bad on turnovers, and he just has to slow the ball down. That's not the Spurs offense running up and down the court. They like to half-court offense, take the ball, make a couple picks, pass the ball around. But Ginobili sometimes gets a little out of hand, and sometimes he doesn't necessarily make the right play. And last night, he went up for a foul, didn't get the call. It led to a 3-pointer.
How big was it for the Heat to have their superstar, the best player in the world, LeBron James, come up with 18 points and just really save the Heat season?
He 100% saved the Heat season. I was very surprised. He was shooting 3 of 12 in the game going into the fourth quarter with 12 points. He finished with 30 by the end of the fourth quarter. That's amazing. That's what the MVP does. He was MVP in the regular season. That's how he should play every game in the NBA Finals.
Absolutely. And Chris Bosh, a player that a lot of people think won't be back in South Beach next year, a player who has gotten his fair amount of trash talk while he's been in the Miami Heat, saves the Heat season twice with 2 unbelievable rebounds and then that pass to Ray Allen. What can you say about Chris Bosh's effort late?
Well, he wants to win another ring. And 2 years ago when he lost the first championship, he went on the ground and started crying. The next year he won it. And, he's pouring champagne on himself in a video. And now he really wants to win this. He's probably the most pumped-up player in the Miami Heat. He's the one who wants to win it because he knows it might be his last year on the Miami Heat.
Exactly. And as you said, Chris Bosh has an incredible basketball IQ.
Absolutely.
One of the smartest players on the court. not really, maybe not has been used the right way since he's been in South Beach. People wanted him to be used as a post player, and he really does not blend it into that. Who do you think, with free agency coming up and the Heat possibly making moves, who does LeBron James work better with, Dwyane Wade or Chris Bosh?
To be honest, I think he works better with Dwyane Wade because he's a slasher, and he just likes to drive to the hoop. Dwyane Wade and LeBron, they play the same style game. Get the ball, try to drive in. If the lane's open, take it, draw a foul. Chris Bosh likes to take that 15-foot jumper from the corner. Yeah, he's more of a finesse player. You're not going to give him the ball and say, okay, now work your way down, like into the hoop and try to score. LeBron and Wade like to slash to the hoop, and that's why they complement each other extremely well.
All right, going into Game 7, it's going to be a very interesting game Thursday night. San Antonio trying to rebound from the horrific, I'd call it a choke. Would you call it a choke?
I would call it a half choke because they did draw the foul. They had a chance to win the game, and they missed a free throw. They actually did what they wanted to do, which was get to the foul line. They just didn't hit them, shooting 2 of 4 down the stretch. And you know what? They went to overtime. All they had to do was make one of those free throws. Just one of them. They'd be crowned champions right now.
Yep.
But instead we're talking about Game 7.
Exactly. And talking about that Game 7, who do you like in South Beach Thursday night in Game 7?
My heart wants the San Antonio Spurs, but my gut is telling me Miami's going to come out and win their 2nd championship in a row.
Score.
I think it's going to be 105 to 98. Going to come down to the wire, down to free throws.
I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think the Heat, Game 6 was the Spurs' chance to win the championship, and they couldn't close the door on Miami.
They couldn't.
Miami's too good. Game 6, the pattern of the series was win-loss, win-loss, San Antonio. Game 6, the Heat kept that pattern alive. And Game 7, I'll take the best player in the world at home. And I'm going to take the Heat 105-95, pulling away late. And I'm going to pick the Miami Heat to win the NBA championship. We're going to take a break here on 3 and Out. When we come back, the Blackhawks in a hole in the Stanley Cup Finals. Can they rebound tonight against Boston? We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to 3 and Out here on LTTV. Our next segment to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. Chicago Blackhawks versus the Boston Bruins. He's excited.
I'm very excited.
But a lot of people around Chicago are feeling nervous. The Blackhawks now currently down 2-1 to the Boston Bruins after losing Game 3 in Boston by a score of 2-0. Tuukka Rask, a shutout for Boston, and losing Game 2 in Chicago 2-1 in overtime. Aaron, the Blackhawks really have not looked the same since they lost Game 1 in overtime.
They really have not. Or Game 2 in overtime, I should say.
They won Game 1 in overtime and lost Game 2 in overtime.
Yes,
they have not looked the same since Game 1.
They have not. In Game 1, they pulled out. I say that they pulled out of their butt, literally, because they were down 3-1 with 12 minutes to go in the game, and they got 2 goals in the next 4 or 5 minutes. Boston doesn't give up quick goals. So, like, for the Hawks to be down 3-1 and make a comeback in Game 1, I thought that would spark them and say, we can do this. But then Games 2 and 3, they only have 1 goal in 2 games. That doesn't happen for a high-flying team like the Hawks.
Absolutely. Boston was so successful at shutting down the Pittsburgh Penguins offense, and through Games 2 and 3, they've done the same thing to the Blackhawks. Ever since that Patrick Sharp goal in Game 1, the Blackhawks had 19 shots in period 1 of Game 2, and Tuukka Rask only let 1 of them in. The second one went in. It should have counted, but the referee blew the whistle. It also would have been 2-0. That was the difference in the game. But ever since that, the Blackhawks offense has just looked in a funk. They've looked lethargic. They've looked lazy, sluggish, any kind of word you can think of.
That's exactly what's going on.
They've looked like they looked in the Detroit series. And what do you think they can do to create some offensive production on 5-on-5 and on the power play?
Well, to be honest, if I were Joel Quenneville, the Chicago Blackhawks head coach, I would actually change up some lines, move a player around here and there. And the power play is horrendous. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
They're 0 for the last 21, I believe. They got to switch something up. They got to put a new player in there, maybe run a different style of play, because Boston's figured out their style of play, and they got to do something different.
The power play, as you said, it's horrendous. It's absolutely dreadful, and it's gotten to the point where it's like as a fan watching the game, you should be pumped up to get a power play.
Oh, absolutely.
But you're not. When the Hawks go on the power play, it's a momentum killer.
It is.
You've seen them having momentum 5-on-5, and they get a power play,
and they can't do anything.
They can't do anything after the power play, and it's inexplicable to me. That much star power on a 5-on-4, and you can't even generate shots. Boston had 3 shorthanded shots in that game. The Blackhawks had 1 shot on the power play. 1.
With a man advantage, too.
1 shot. They gave up more shots when they had a 5-on-4 advantage than they got on Boston's net. That is awful. That is despicable.
I don't know how they have. How do you have a man advantage and give up more shots?
It's like they're hesitant. They don't want to enter the zone. They don't know how to enter the zone. They can't dump and chase. Patrick Kane tries to dangle all over the place, and Zdeno Chara just sits him down, and they turn the puck over. Dave Boland's turned into a turnover machine.
And a penalty machine, too. He gets in the penalty box like it's his job.
It's just been awful. And people don't want to criticize the Blackhawks. Like, all over Twitter, I got like, oh, you're being too critical. Take it easy, man. You rip on the... I'm not ripping on the Blackhawks.
You're just stating the facts.
I'm not. There's a difference between ripping on the Blackhawks and being critical when they deserve to be criticized.
I agree.
And through the last 2 games, and even the first 3 games of this series, they have deserved to be criticized 100%. It's like people in this town, they feel like, I think this town has so much of like a stereotype against bandwagon fans that people are scared to be critical of a Chicago team because they fear that people are going to think they're a bandwagon fan. People should be able to come out and say that the Blackhawks are playing terrible, and people are like, oh, you're being way too harsh right now. It's only 2 games. Yeah, it's only 2 games in the Stanley Cup Finals.
I know, the championship series. You can't lose any more games.
And they've looked awful.
Yeah, like I said, like game 1, they barely pulled that out.
Yeah.
Games 2 and 3, they looked like a team that only won 15 games, not the team that won 37 games or 36.
The bounces have really evened out because in game 1, Chicago did get a lot of bounces in overtime. In game 3, Boston got a lot of bounces and they won that game. But in game 3, the Chicago Blackhawks just flat out didn't show up. They did not. That is maybe the worst playoff performance I've seen from the Chicago Blackhawks since the Renaissance in 2007 when they finally started becoming good again. It was just, I can't think of a game where they've just looked worse. But Tuukka Rask and Corey Crawford have really been the story. The goaltending has been amazing on both sides.
The goaltending has been phenomenal. If either team pulls this out, I could see Crawford or Tuukka Rask being a Conn Smythe candidate for being like the MVP of the playoffs. They both play their hearts out. Their save percentage, I think, is 94%. And another key thing, faceoffs.
Yeah. Hawks are getting murdered in the faceoff circle.
It's terrible. Like Jonathan Toews won like 59% of his faceoffs during the regular season. I see the guy losing 8 out of 10 faceoffs to anybody.
He can't buy a draw right now.
He's got like a mental block in his head.
Yeah. Corey Crawford, he's always been criticized as giving up soft goals. Corey Crawford has been the Blackhawks' best player
all year,
by far, all playoffs, I think.
Oh,
and
I say
especially
all year.
in this series, all year too, maybe.
Yeah.
But he has been played with so much heart and been so special. Where like, and he's finally playing this good, and he's getting no offensive support. I think it's terrible.
No offensive support whatsoever. If you could hold a team in the Stanley Cup to 2 goals or even 1, you're doing your job. Absolutely doing your job. If you're stopping 30, 40 shots, like in your save percentage is 95, you're doing your job. Crawford's done just fine. He needs more offensive support. He needs Hossa to come back and play well. He needs Toews to score more goals. He needs everybody around in front of him to do their job.
The Blackhawks' depth has been something that's really helped this team be good, and the depth has helped them so far in this series. I can't think of a superstar. Maybe just Patrick Sharp was the only superstar that scored for the Blackhawks in this series. But that depth doesn't really help when your superstars aren't producing.
It doesn't at all.
What can the Blackhawks do with their speed and finesse to try to counteract Boston's size advantage?
Well, I think they need to, in hockey they have something called a stretch pass, and that's where you make a really, really long pass down the ice. They haven't really been controlling those that well. They pass it down the ice, and their guy loses the puck. I think they should run like different plays to get inside the Boston zone. Instead of just skating in and trying to dangle around people, I think they need to focus more on just trying to settle down. Don't shoot it around the boards in the back behind the goalie because they're stopping that. Dribble the puck in. Seriously, just dribble it in there and don't try to juke around because Just make simple passes. Don't try to force something that's not there.
That's something that you said, that the Blackhawks are trying to be, they say in hockey, too cute with the puck. They're trying to do
too cute with the
too
puck.
many finesse. They're not making the dirty plays. But, you know, going into tonight's Game 4, I am really thinking that the Blackhawks are going to come back and bounce back. This team is too good to have 3 horrid games in a row. They did it against the Red Wings, but
Coming back 3-1 is
coming back 3-1 against the Boston Bruins is
tough.
Completely different than coming back against the Detroit Red Wings.
Absolutely.
So tonight, what is your prediction for the game?
I actually think the Hawks are going to win. Despite all this, I think they're fired up because they know this is it. Like, going down 3-1 is going to be tough. They're going to win. I say 2-1. Close game, good goaltending is going to come down to the third period.
I think Corey Crawford needs to have a shutout for the Hawks to win tonight. Maybe not. I'll say 1 goal. If Boston scores 2 goals tonight, game over, done.
You think so?
2 goals, it's done. It's got to be a shutout for Corey Crawford or 1 goal against, and I think the Blackhawks win either 2-0 or 2-1, possibly even 1-0. But I think it's going to be a really
low-scoring affair.
Low-scoring, grinded out. I think it's going to be a heart-stopping game, and you know we really hope that the Blackhawks can pull it out and tie the series heading back to the Madhouse for Game 5. We'll be right back here on 3 and Out. Next, we're going to talk about college baseball and the College World Series going on in Omaha right now. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to 3 and Out on LTTV. Our next topic, the College World Series going on in Omaha, Nebraska, the annual 8-team final tournament for the college baseball season. And it's been an interesting tournament so far. A lot of big-name teams knocked out so far.
Yes.
Vanderbilt was knocked out in the Super Regionals. They were the #1 team all year long. And my LSU Tigers knocked out after 2 games. It was just ugly to watch.
It was very ugly to watch. Like, I didn't really watch them all year, but I did see their last game against North Carolina. They could not hit a runner from, like, if they had a guy in scoring position, they couldn't get the clutch hit to score more runs. They had chances. I think they easily could have won the game, but they just didn't get the final hit.
They could have won both games. LSU had 20 runners left in scoring position at the end of an inning. That is terrible.
That's not going to win you a game or a series against North Carolina, who is the #1 overall team in the yeah, they're the #1 team left.
And it has just been, I obviously being down at LSU, I watched this team all spring long, and they were so good defensively, pitching-wise, batting-wise, and they just lose their hitting. As I said, 20 runners left in scoring position. The first game against UCLA, they lose 2-1. 2 unearned runs given up on 2 defensive errors.
That's not going to help either.
Everything that made LSU good going into this tournament
Didn't
backfired
happen.
in the tournament, and it was just bad. And it's obviously really sad for me. But who do you like now that's left in the tournament? Now that probably the best team in the tournament is out.
Well, I'll be honest. I didn't really have a definite team picked out, but if I were to pick one team, I would say NC State, North Carolina State, because they have the #1 pitcher in the country. He's going to be the #1 overall pick next year. They already said that's a for sure thing. Lefty throws 98 miles an hour. I think he's going to pitch against North Carolina, the #1 overall team, either today or tomorrow. But I think NC State's got a really good shot. If they can, they're a great hitting team. If they have great pitching. If that pitcher stays healthy and doesn't get hurt, I think they got a good shot.
Absolutely. NC State rematching with North Carolina. The winner of that goes on.
In-state rivalry right there.
In-state rivalry. Winner goes on to play UCLA in the semifinals. So loser of that game is knocked out. Indiana lost to Mississippi State, so they get to rematch with Oregon. And the loser of that game is out of the tournament. Winner goes on to play Mississippi State again in the semifinals. So Mississippi State, a little SEC love from Johnny Lombardi. I think the Bulldogs, they've been solid all year. Mississippi State, Indiana with Sam Travis.
Yes.
They're great offense. First Big Ten team, or their first appearance in the College World Series in a long time. So that's good for Big Ten baseball. But I think the Hoosiers might lose to Oregon State. I'm not sure. Oregon State's been pretty good all year, but you know, it's really anyone's ball game now. And you know, there was a quote from Skip Bertman, an old LSU baseball coach, before Paul Mainieri showed up, and he said, a lot of really good teams go to Omaha and lose. That's just baseball.
A lot, yes.
And that's just kind of how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, there could be 5 teams in the top 5 in the, final 8, and if only one of them is going to come out on top. If there's a team that's number 1 all year and they lose in the championship to like a team that wasn't number 1, it just happens. It's baseball. Everything's got to be there. Baseball is a huge team sport. Every player that's out in the field's got to do their job. If one player screws up, it could change the entire game.
Exactly. Everything's mental. And LSU against UCLA, just not getting those bounces early. 2 atrocious errors. One to the freshman shortstop, Alex Bregman, who's been sensational all year. Probably the best freshman in the nation. And just with 2 outs, a ground ball to the shortstop, just didn't get his body in front of it, and it goes past him. And then LSU had bases loaded or 2 men on in the bottom of the inning, and they couldn't pull through. And it's just one of those things where that's just baseball. It's a hard thing to take, but I mean the rest of the series is going to be amazing. It
is going to be amazing. Me being a Cubs fan, about fielding and hitting, it really does all have to be there. Like, if you don't hit the ball but you pitch well, you'll lose. If you pitch well and hit well, you're going to win. That's just how baseball is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a break here on 3 and Out. Coming up next, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball, some early surprises, and some of our All-Star predictions coming up next on 3 and Out. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to 3 and Out. Our last subject of the show, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball and some of our early All-Star selections and some early MVP selections. So speaking about the All-Star game, Aaron, yeah, it's really good topics. What are you looking at All-Star-wise for the American League and the National League so far through the season?
What, like specific position?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at, to be honest, the first base position. There are a lot of first basemen that can kill the ball. Prince Fielder on the Detroit Tigers. And you know what? To go to third base, Miguel Cabrera, I think he's got like 70 RBIs already. I mean, some players won't even get that in a full season. And we're not even halfway done. But I'm looking at the infield. The infield is, they got a lot of killers. They got Albert Pujols. Anthony Rizzo on the Cubs is a good slugger. He's young. He hasn't proven himself yet, but he's got a shot. But there's a lot of good young players out there. A lot of surprise players, too.
I'm actually going to look at the outfield. I'm going to look on the National League side of things. Carlos Gonzalez on the Colorado Rockies has been a stud.
Good. He is always a stud.
He's a superstar. He's been great for years. No one talks. He's one of the quietest players in the league. No one talks about him. Carlos Gonzalez and Troy Tulowitzki, I think, maybe the best hitting combo in the National League, possibly.
I 100% agree with that. Troy Tulowitzki, and Carlos Gonzalez.
Cargo.
Awesome nickname. But they both crush the ball, and they hit for average. They field, they get RBIs, they knock runners in. I mean, playing up in Colorado, that ball is going to fly too.
Yeah,
the numbers should look good every year, and they're young too. Like, they're only 25 and 26 years old. They're going to hit well every year. They're great players.
I expect both of them to make the All-Star team for the National League. Maybe not Tulowitzki because he's injured right now. He's going to be back from the DL in about a week maybe, but I think both of those guys have had all-star quality seasons so far. And Colorado's somewhere right there in the mix, in the standings, where they could be easily a playoff team. But back to what I was talking about.
With that offense? They're a threat.
Back to what I was talking about with the All-Star team, the outfield, I also like a lot of guys in the outfield, like the Uptons in Atlanta have been pretty good this year. And a bunch of other guys in Oakland and Texas have had good outfield seasons, fielding-wise and then hitting-wise, especially for the All-Star game.
Yes, I 100% agree with you with that as well. The American League outfield really honestly changes every single year because, Prince Fielder used to play he's in the infield, but he played for the National League. Now he's in the American League. And, it really just comes down to trades. And it really depends on the team you go to because, for example, Detroit and Texas are the number 1 or 2 hitting teams in the league. All those players are going to have good numbers, but, teams that don't have good offense necessarily, their players might suffer.
Absolutely. And we're going to take a look at standings now, and some surprises with the standings early on, especially in the National League West. Aaron, Arizona leads that division by a game and a half over San Diego, Colorado, and San Francisco, all a game and a half back, and the Dodgers are just kind of hanging out of contention with all those superstars. But the NL West has really been a surprise, and really all those teams are just solid baseball clubs.
They're all very, very solid teams. San Francisco being, the defending champions from last year, they beat the Detroit Tigers in the World Series. Arizona, I'm surprised they're doing this well. You know?
I couldn't name off the top of my head. Probably couldn't name a single Diamondback to you right now. That team has been changed so much over the years, but they're finding a way to win.
I couldn't either. They had Justin Upton, but you know, he got traded. He's on the Atlanta Braves now. But that whole division is tight. Like, you know, in 3 days, you could see Arizona go from first place to fourth place.
Exactly.
I mean, it's that close.
Padres have won 8 in a row to get themselves into second place in that division. They were far way back.
4 or 5 out,
Four
maybe?
or 5 out, and now they're a game and a half back of Arizona. So I really like Colorado to come out of that division, at least as a wild card, maybe the division champion. Who knows? There's a lot of baseball left to be played. Another division that's huge right now is the National League Central Division, your division, and it's just been unbelievable.
Yeah, there's 4 teams that have 42 plus wins. I mean, there's not one other division in the entire league, in the American League and National League, that have 3 teams. Excuse me, 3 teams. St. Louis has 46 wins. They're 20 games above 500. In Cincinnati, they got like 43 wins, and Pittsburgh's got 42. You don't see that very often.
Yeah.
You don't see 3 teams completely blowing away the other competition. I mean, they're all studs. But every team, they got pitching and hitting. And it's all there.
You know, you'd think that the Cardinals would run away with that division, but the Reds are right there, and then the Pirates are getting better and better year after year.
If the Cardinals fall asleep for a week and a half, you know, they're in 3rd place in the division, and they're not even going to make the playoffs. And honestly, all those teams have a chance to make deep runs in the playoffs.
Exactly. And right now we're going to go to some of our early playoff predictions. Who are going to be your, let's see, you've got 2 wild cards and then 3 division champs. Who are your 5 teams from the National League?
I think the Atlanta Braves are going to win the division because Washington is, you know, they're slacking. They're not doing that well. They literally are slacking. I think St. Louis will win the division. They're top 2 or 3 in hitting and pitching. Every hitter hits over 300. I can't believe it. I think the wild card teams are going to come from one from the NL Central in Cincinnati. I think they got experience. They won 90-something games last year. They'll make the playoffs. So St. Louis will win the division. Cincinnati will be the wild card, and they're going to play a team for your NL West. I want the Colorado Rockies to win the division, but then I think San Francisco, will get 2nd place and be the 2nd wild card team. So there I have Atlanta, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Colorado, and San Francisco. They're my 5 teams.
In my National League, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take Atlanta, but I think Washington and Philadelphia will make that division closer as the year goes on. I'll also take St. Louis in the NL Central. NL West, I think the Rockies are going to end up winning that division when Tulowitzki gets back. And my 2 wildcard teams, I'm going to go Pittsburgh. And San Francisco, narrowly beating out Arizona for that 2nd wildcard spot. What is your American League playoff picture as of right now?
My American League, okay, I got Baltimore.
Winning the division?
No, wild card.
Wild card.
I think Boston, believe it or not, I mean, you know, they lost some players. They had a couple injured players. Dave Ortiz has come back, and he's the #1 hitter right now. He came back late, and he's hitting phenomenal. He's got over 50 RBIs. But my teams, I got Boston winning the AL Central. The wild card it always comes from the AL East. Sorry, AL East, American League East. It's going to be Boston, then I think Baltimore. I don't think the Yankees are going to make it. They're too injured. I think their pitchers are old. They're not going to last. I got Oakland. Winning the American League West. They're going to beat out Texas. They're just the way their system is run. And then Detroit. So my teams are going to be Detroit Tigers, Baltimore Orioles, Boston Red Sox, Texas Rangers. They got to be the other wild card team in Oakland.
You read my mind. I'm going to take Detroit, obviously, out of the AL Central, just pacing that division right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll take Boston in the AL East, hanging on to that one. I think Baltimore makes it close. I think Tampa Bay maybe makes it a little closer for comfort.
That's possible. Great young pitching every year.
Absolutely believe that Oakland will win the AL West. That's a good team with a lot of no-name players that are just playing a good system. And I think the wild card will come down to Baltimore. And I'll give it to Texas right now, but don't be surprised if Tampa Bay or the Cleveland Indians tighten up that wild card as well. So I think that's my AL. That's what I'm going to go with right now. That is it for us here on 3 and Out. Thank you for joining us. For Aron Nelson, I'm Johnny Lombardi. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. See you there.